It's a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr. Hosey, and to follow the former leaders of the Conservative and the Labour Party in talking about incineration, looking to the future. I speak as the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on air quality, and like the previous speakers, my focus is very much about air quality and climate change, and this particular incineration is a direction forward that we really wish to sort of pause on, because the current plan for the government is to double incineration by 2030, and certainly the research that we've published in the all-party group about the impact of ultrafine particulates that have been mentioned, namely those particulates that do get through the filters, which are much, much smaller than the ones we normally talk about, the PM2.5. The latest evidence suggests that whilst the World Health Organization talks about weights, 10 micrograms of PM2.5 down to 5 micrograms as at the advisory levels, the very smaller ones, if you break up 5 micrograms of PM2.5 into much smaller particulates with less weight, they actually do more damage to the body because they penetrate immediately into the bloodstream, into the vital organs, and cause permanent and ongoing chronic damage. So we are concerned that if there's a new incinerator in Edmonton, which would be generating 700,000 tonnes of carbon, 700,000 tonnes, and burning 700,000 tonnes of waste, that at that sort of quantum in an urban environment with often poorer households there, this will have a significant impact on public health, in particular at a time that we haven't cracked the air quality problem we see in Britain. We've got wood-burning stoves in urban environments, giving rise to 38% of PM2.5, for example, and we've got, still got a problem with diesel cars, etc. So we add this on. This is a real problem. And there are opportunities, as has been pointed out in the case of Edmonton. The recycling rate is something in the region of 30%. And my honourable friend said it was difficult to get to that. But in Swansea, because the recycling rate is 62%. So if one can double the rate, obviously we could halve the amount we're burning. And this is the simple mathematics. And the government's got to ask itself the question, well, how do we provide the incentive structure to do that? And again, my right honourable friend said when he was a councillor, there was an incentive to avoid landfill tax, and therefore they went towards burning. But obviously if we had I appreciate the Treasury aren't here, but if we had an incineration tax, then there will be more focus on recycling. And as has been mentioned, there are new technologies for chemical and mechanical recycling that are available. And the real risk of this particular venture is that we'll end up with excess capacity, and instead of an incentive to do more recycling, there'll be an incentive to do more burning, and to actually import burning and to produce more waste, which is clearly not what we want to do. We do know that some of these environmental impacts can be far-reaching, because again, studies we saw from Holland showed that eggshells would have dioxins in them from incinerator waste, sort of 10 kilometres away. We saw issues with heavy metals in the toenails of children, giving rise to leukemia, etc. So a lot of this science is emerging and not known, and the science that predicates this particular planning agreement basically is older technology, because the technology is moving quickly, and also the medical knowledge and medical science is moving. And there is a case for a moratorium to pause and think. And indeed, there is a moratorium on incineration in Wales as a matter of interest. It is the case, of course, that there's a move toward, there's a pre-letter for a judicial review has been published now. I think it was written on the 28th of January, basically pointing out that some of the claims that have been made don't stand up to a lot of scrutiny. In particular, there's a claim that there's only going to be 28,000 tonnes of carbon, when of course on their own figures, the Northern Waste Authority had a figure of 683,000, something like 700,000 tonnes of waste. They claim there will be developed carbon capture ready, but in fact it won't be built carbon capture ready, which again is in breach of the government advice on energy National Policy Statement 3. So what's been happening is clearly not in compliance with what DEFRA is saying and BEIS is saying. And in terms of capacity, the Mayor of London is predicting that there'll be 950,000 tonnes of excess burning capacity in London if this goes ahead with alongside other plans. So we need a holistic plan. It may be the case that we do want to substitute some of the dirty incinerators for a cleaner incinerator, but we need to see this in the round with the best technology available. And on that point, there isn't a sort of dedicated pre-sorting device in this particular plan, in particular extracting plastics and recyclables, that should be used again. These are resources, and obviously we need a broader plan of taxing plastic and having less different types of plastic, so it's more cost-effective and profitable to extract and reuse and recycle, and we use less and all the rest of it. We should have a fiscal strategy, etc., etc. But we know that is hopefully the benign future. But in this case, we're just locking ourselves into old technologies, old science, and in the knowledge that the precautionary principle would make us think, well, actually, let's step back and not do this. The North London Waste Authority is in breach also of the Climate Change Committee advice in terms of using the expression low carbon, where energy from waste isn't counted as low carbon. There's questions of what this will be compliant with the new changes in the national grid and other changes. And finally, obviously it's been mentioned that this is going to be funded now by a new type of green bonds. But the Chancellor had said that in terms of his future for green bonds, that the UK wouldn't embark on a generation of taxonomy, as it's called, for sustainable finances, that wasn't at least at the standards of the EU. But of course, when you look at the standards of the EU, they exclude energy from waste in any green bonds that they do. So again, obviously in the case of the EU, they're taxing £650 per tonne as opposed to £200 per tonne on plastic as well. But in conclusion, therefore, I think this is a moment to pause, because if these green bonds go ahead, they might be the source of the next sort of 50 applications that are going in, and we will end up with a situation whereby there's financial risk to the bondholders, of course, because there'll be excess capacity, as we've already described, and will it be in this farcical situation where we're providing incentives to grow more incineration, which ultimately will be more pollution in highly urban areas, affecting all our constituents. And therefore, I very much welcome this debate, and it's obviously a great privilege to be part of it. Thank you, Mr.